try to,
Well, I
acknowledge.
know what you're trying to do, it's just not one of these things the state is constantly,
Yeah, but this rule's been around since the 1970s, Bruce, so.
okay. We don't wanna be California. Is there anything you buy that doesn't say it causes cancer in California, according to California?
So when Andy fixed my Mantis rototiller, when I brought it down from the first thing he did was look at it and says, we gotta rip this off, that's the California smog control. That thing ran perfect after that.
So on the municipal services factor, I mean, just,
But I think it's well written.
Yeah.
now this here, I mean, this does seem to be harsh. I mean, to me, if anything, it just seems like one thing tripping the trigger.
Well, I was gonna suggest you add a sentence that the planning board reserves the right to.
No, I do think there should be like a number, but I don't like all these planning board reserves the right to. I think it opens us up to more than I feel like dealing with for a one Wednesday per night engagement.
Well, you're obligated to leave it the way it is, I guess.
We can leave it there. If anybody has any suggestions on it, I would be open to
I
it.
mean,
but-
what I do have a problem with, like, is on the very first one. I mean, if you're on the rating, to classify as a tier 1, you can't have any rating above a 1.
Right, I know, that's what my point is, it seems like it's a little too jumpy.
Yeah, no, but there I will disagree. I will say, if you've got even one thing that puts you in, for instance, if you had, everything else was minor, but they use extremely hazardous substances on site.
Photo processing place or something.
Okay, well, how about this then, okay, Bruce?
Wouldn't you want to have them do a full
All right, now, in looking at the bottom end, and let's go back up to the new factor number 1. Maybe we could have up to 5,000 square feet, the rating would still be 1. And maybe that rating would make them into those higher numbers. Go back up to factor, see that, right here, Bruce?
The new factor 1.
The new factor 1.
Right, so maybe this shouldn't be, 1, 2, 3, 4, basically. Okay, maybe this should say rating equals 3 for the size of the structure. Like, would they, if everything else is no big deal, and the only thing that's here, do they need to be greater than 4? I mean, if somebody, under this, if somebody built an empty, a storage facility, okay, for people to store their residential stuff in, and it was more than 15,000 square feet.
You're saying take out the whole column, the minimal impact tier 1, and just create between those two blocks, use the higher, and call that tier 1?
We could just have this, rating equals 1 and rating equals 2, or something, I don't know.
Oh, I got it.
For like, up to, more, and 1 would be up to 5,000 feet, 2 would be up to 15,000 feet, and then 3 would be,
That's reasonable.
or something like that.
Increase the sizes of structures, is that what you're saying?
Right, because I was just trying to point out, because Bruce said, well, there could be, everything could be fine, and he tosses the chemicals out there, so, I kind of agree with that. So what you're doing when you say that is that the chemicals are probably fairly important, but is it really that important on how big this person's building is, especially if there's like nothing else going on in it, if it's a storage facility?
Yes, because when you say it was a storage facility of that size, you're going to be generating a lot more traffic. It's covering a lot bigger area.
Yeah, but then you're going to have that picked up later. That's picked up in trip count.
We'll take care of that.
If somebody wanted to build a 15 or 20,000 square foot warehouse out here, did you think that would require a complete detailed site?
it's just a tier rating, like,
Yeah, again, for the tier rating.
right, I just think that this thing is, overcomplicated.
I said they get one mulligan.
I
So all
mean,
we're thinking,
you could say unless two items are high, but I don't know. Then, there are businesses that would be, say, tier 2 with a lot of things, and they'll have one thing, which is really a concern.
I'll tell you what, I'll leave this the way it is right now, but I'm gonna put it as a bin item for the next time this ordinance gets updated to change it, because I think that we were trying again to accommodate people. One of the things that we tried last time is we fought this big battle of accommodating this variety of development. We made all these different rules, and some of them just don't really make any sense.
Oh, I would like to throw out about half of it, but then again, we'll get it.
Well, to be honest with you, the only thing people seem to be concerned about, are the wind. I think if we made we took this whole table out of here, nobody would notice.
But if you took the whole table out, you'd have to take the whole tier idea.
Well, no, I know. I think the tier idea is a good idea, and I think from from a long way out level, I think it helps future planning boards who don't have maybe as much experience as we do doing this because they haven't been sitting here. The reason I think it's a good tool is because it helps people who haven't been doing this all the time, don't do it for a living, haven't been involved since the beginning. It helps to build a little bit more of guidelines for them. It helps them to understand what's going on and what's important and what's not important. So I'm not actually in favor of chucking the whole thing out, but on a personal level, I definitely don't need this to know whether or not a project needs to be reviewed or not, but
The thing is,
do.
you may have a lot of people that come in and they've got what they think is just a little project, and then when they start pointing out what they're going to be doing, it's like, oh, wait a minute.
Right, but do we need to have that much emphasis put on building size as an example? We don't even make right now, the way it is set up right now is if they generate hazardous waste, that's less important than a 15,000 square foot building. That's the way this is set up now, just so you understand that.
Yep. There's no ideal situation on this.
I mean, so does everybody say they want me to leave it the way it is? Okay.
I can come up with an example for every one of these factors where you could say that shouldn't be important for that particular business. I'm sure you could as well. Just like your example of an accountant. For number of employees.
Okay.
For instance, I'd like to ban all exterior lighting. Never mind having a tier classification, you can't have any lights on after dark.
Well, we want to try to avoid having personal biases on some of that stuff. Because we could all,
I hate light pollution, that's why all my outside lights are.
Well, I'm not gonna get into the business of having everybody trade their personal biases for somebody else's personal biases to
Yeah, I
approve on.
know, that's
We're
what
not
I'm trying to
doing
get
that.
away from.
The other one for the residential, we got into this net development area thing, and I forgot how we resolved that. Why is this doing this again? This is,
I bet the storm is screwing up the signal.
Probably.
because now I don't have my,
Why did that come back?
right, I know.
Can you go up and close that one up there of the X? Because you're working off the file, weren't you?
Yeah, I am. But I wanted to go look at, see how we solved the issue last week.
Jeff came when you did it right. Jeff came when you did it right.
I don't know. Want an awful lot. What, did you see it up there when?
When they were talking about that, they were on it.
So what article did we do
12.
where we made the,
We're on 12.
no, I know we're on 12, but last week, we changed those net
Oh.
development areas. Is that Article 10?
Let's
10 for that?
No.
Eight two. But we didn't change anything, or did we?
Just the minimum side and rear setback.
We decided to put that into the future, that's one of those bin items
Oh,
that
yeah.
is so complicated that right now, and it will affect more areas, like it'll also affect this section.
Right, that's why I wanted to bring this up.
Growth management, we have this in two places?
No, this is for residential.
This
This
is
is for non-residential.
non-residential, okay.
And I just was trying to make sure, you know, that there was some kind of consistent thought process, you know, or whatever in this.
Must have been. You don't think so?
You know, never make mistakes, right? Well, keep that in mind for a minute. So are we still gonna look at 3 acre and 5 acre lot sizes with,
For tier two,
yeah, I think these are actually more favorable now that I'm looking at these again. No, they're about the same. It's like at least like 60% of the lot there. And
Now,
that's,
a question. when
and
you
that's
say-
actually 80% of the lot, just so you know, okay? So on this one, what we said was that to have a residence, okay, 60% of the lot has to be developable for a residence, but 80% of the lot has to be developable for a non-residential site. And, now on the other ones though, the residential looks more restrictive on these lower tiers, so, I mean,
They're also smaller lots.
right, well, this says you have to, on this bigger lot, you have to have more area that's developable.
Right.
Is that what we wanna say?
So it's more restrictive.
It's more restrictive, I'm just saying, I just wanna, I don't really, to be honest with you, I don't have an opinion. I just wanted to point out a piece of information so that people can say yes, that they want it to be the way it is, or it's too restrictive, or it's not restrictive enough.
I think it's too restrictive. Yeah, a lot of acreage, and you have a lot of swampland on it.
Or high slopes, which is not uncommon in Clifton.
Then on the flip side, do you want,
I would
on the other side, the other way of looking at it though is, you're saying, unless you have a really, really decent piece of property, we don't want you to develop non-residential stuff out there. That's what that says.
And it hasn't got a problem in there.
That is the minimum lot area, which means somebody could get around the bad section by getting a bigger piece. They're still stuck with the 4.
Well, they still have to have the total number of acreage.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have it, 3, I would put 1.5 and then.
Well, that's true, if they had a 10 acre lot, what this actually says is, it says you have to have 4 acres, so you're right. That only is working with the minimum, so if they had a 100 acre lot and 96 acres of it was a swamp, it would be okay.
Yeah.
But if they've only got 5 acres,
Yeah.
they've got to have
They're
4
SOL.
acres.
Right, all right, okay, so that's actually what that says. I was kind of getting my percentages kind of in there, assuming minimum lot size, but if you have a bigger lot, you can still have 4 acres.
And most of the GMA big lots anyway.
Right, so, okay.
Yeah, on this side setback down there, I know we changed residential to 10 feet, but wasn't it Chad Gates that actually brought that to us before?
Yes,
And wasn't his garage a business use?
no.
It was not?
What that was about was, remember the lot that my ex-brother-in-law used to own?
Yeah.
And somebody else has bought that lot, and they put a garage, they wanted to put a garage up, okay, and the garage was too close to the property line. I think they've solved it by selling the property lines have changed over there or something like this at this point, but he wanted to expand the garage or something, and that's how the whole thing
Okay.
came to light. It had to do with that was the question lot.
Alright.
In that neighborhood, everything is already tight in there anyway. I mean, nothing would be, or there would be a lot of non-compliant buildings in there anyway. So it's not like you're changing the character of the area.
So we can leave this at,
Right,
35,
because this is for
non-residential.
non-residential, which we don't have a lot of non-residential development anyway, so we don't really have a lot of precedents to go by. So if we wanted to look better, we should do it this way.
Okay.
Now, here's a question though, when you say minimum front setback, is that just to buildings, or is that for even things like parking lots?
I believe it's parking lots too.
Which means you're gonna have somebody, even for a tier, which means technically the store down here should have been moved back another 100 feet off the road.
If you put it in a new store,
Do you
That's
really
what
want
that
to force
says.
somebody to put a convenience store or something else, even the parking area 100 feet from the road?
well, we should just follow up and,
That's close, that store.
Yeah, and it's fairly typical for most convenience
I would
stores
say
or for a
it's
lot of
probably
stores.
about 70 or 80 feet from Route 9.
The store, but,
the store, he's over at the parking lot, that's,
and the way this is worded, it's like you're supposed to have 100 feet of woods or grass
Oh,
between,
before the parking lot.
before the parking lot.
For any gas station, you're not gonna get one like that without it.
So the parking lot is considered part of the business, it's not actually the structure.
Right, just as if you were on your house, you can't, you know, whatever the setback is for a house, like you got residential right
okay,
now.
we'll look into it. It's so noted.
Yeah. I just don't find that reasonable.
It might be the building, okay, I don't know.
We need to specify that if
Right.
two structures rather than, and
Yeah,
then if you
I
do
mean,
that, you need to have a separate something for things like
Gas
parking lots.
Gas pump part of the business?
Yep. I think you'd find a court would say that's,
No, the court would say it was fine because you defined it.
Yeah. So it not only applies to front setback, it would apply to all setbacks.
yeah, and that's the thing, I find some of these setbacks a little high to me for,
For tier 1.
35 feet is not far from a side setback. I mean, to me,
if you're talking about even driveways and roads or access paths or anything.
don't forget, like I said, there hardly is any non-residential development in town, so there's like no precedent. You could go down Scott Point Road and other places, you know, even on the other road over here, Getchell Road, and then a couple of those little projects up in there, and find examples where the setbacks that we have are already not compliant, but except for like, what, the 3 businesses that we have in town, you know, you don't have,
But you're making it difficult for a new business to move into town if you have some of these setbacks.
I'm agreeing it should be the buildings on the front, okay, I'm thinking, I'm not, but on these side setbacks, I don't think it's 35 feet is an unreasonable distance to set your improvements back for a business. Because where else are you gonna put your buffers in?
Yeah. Makes sense.
You're trying to have buffers, we've already
Remember,
talked
this
about,
is- Yeah, this is only tier 2, however, in some cases, if you're not making a lot of noise or anything, a fence is a buffer.
we're trying to, in it, to me, instead of being so restrictive on zoning, we're trying to have performance standards. So if we had zoning that said you can only put businesses in these areas, period, end of story, and you only had to have houses these other places, then probably we could go down to 5 feet. But given that we are trying to promote a little bit more mixed use and provide property owners options, I think that we should probably provide protections for adjoiners. And like I said, I don't think we have precedents here.
Yeah, well, I just look at it, we have basically created a situation that because of most of the lots, for instance, in any of the residential areas of town, I don't think you got a lot over 200 feet wide anywhere, because nobody made them wider than they had to speak of.
Well, they probably don't want to put businesses on.
Right, well, basically you made it impossible anyway because of lot width and road frontage. Unless somebody buys 2 lots that are existing, they aren't gonna be able to anyway.
So, this is what I recommend that you do then. I recommend that you, if you don't like this table, you write up another table. But you've got sound to work on right now.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying, I find a lot of these overly restrictive.
I'll look into the road thing, because I don't know off the top of my head whether we mean the building or the parking lot.
I think that Eric's right in that if we just tackle the front of the business, which is the most important, the side setbacks and the rear setbacks, you've got to have that much room.
There really aren't causing a problem, but I can definitely see how that front setback could be an issue, if we're talking about the parking lot.
Yeah.
This probably a dumb question, but does it make a difference if it's paved through road versus, say, a dirt road that dead ends somewhere?
Route 9, 180 is different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why you have,
There's 2 separate.
Oh, I'm sorry, this,
but we'll look into it.
Okay.
Do the same thing for the,
We're really moving back in height here.
Yeah, I really have a problem.
yeah, but
with
those are
that.
big, giant facilities.
Yeah.
Let's just do what we're doing now, let's not,
Oh, no, I'm not.
yeah, let's go for the, okay, what about this? We talked a little bit earlier tonight, we spent quite a bit of time talking about the height restrictions and appropriate and necessary. I mean, do we like appropriate and necessary, or do we wanna come up with some other language?
Other language.
So,
how about to be determined for the proposed use,
right, well then,
or it's more of a definitive, making a determination.
right, and so,
Decision.
a decision, right, so that's, I mean, that's exactly where I was going, a finding, exactly. It's exactly where I was going. So if it's gonna be necessary, appropriate and necessary, if we're gonna leave that language in there or something approximating that, then we're gonna have to have a finding of what's appropriate and necessary every single time this comes up.
But how often it's gonna come up?
I don't know, I mean, that's the other thing about doing this, okay, so we're going through and doing it, there are definitely things that if you were gonna, exercise these conditions on a regular basis, it would be a higher priority, but the opportunity to exercise a lot of these things that we're having these longer discussions about is minimal at best. But we're trying to have something that if something does come up, we don't have to have a problem later too.
Well, think, at the federal level, the word finding termination has a legal
Right, connotation.
connotation, whereas that's more,
Right,
Why don't we just put in a specific height for the structures without occupied space? If it's 35 feet for occupied, why don't we put in, what kind of business were we thinking of?
these are tier 2, non-residentials.
Well, I'm thinking about when the mill was out here, you had the towers for the sawdust.
But that would have been a tier 3, wouldn't it? These are little businesses here.
Right.
put up a climbing wall.
Well, that's true too. Well, then see, that
It's a
breaks.
pretty tall climbing wall, 35 feet.
Yeah, there'll be climbing walls that could be 110 feet.
Yeah.
Now you're gonna toss it into tier 3. For
So
what,
let's put
climbing
something in
wall?
there, let's put it in, let's put an actual number in, let's put 45, 50.
Well, actually, I actually have been thinking more like what Dave said. I think that maybe we should be looking at having a finding. Because then you're not gonna pound somebody for a fairly innocuous development just because this climbing wall, you know, a rappelling tower is gonna be 110 feet.
Right, if you wanna change the wording somehow, that's fine, but you're still, in effect, even if you're trying to change the wording for legal reasons, you're still, it's up to the board to determine whether it's appropriate and necessary for the use.
Right. What Dave is pointing out here is that a finding, okay, the language he uses is.
Oh, the language is better, I
Right.
still think it should be the board's
Right,
Determination.
right. But we
determination.
should, somehow it needs to get back into the ordinance, it needs to get written down. That's actually where I'm going with this, okay, in a nutshell. Okay, it can't just be, guy comes in and we go, yep, that's a good idea, 120 foot.
We made a mistake in not making an adequate finding. That's,
If we put a number in there and they want to exceed it, they just have to go up to the next tier.
So,
well, not necessarily, because your next
Say what you
tier
said,
now,
what
you'll
were
be
your words?
putting a number in.
Well, determination or finding have that is where a decision has been made, that this is what's gonna be the policy, or this is gonna be. You made a determination. And it's really not, well, it's appealable, but when you say appropriate and necessary, that opens up, well, what's appropriate and necessary to me may not be for you. But if the board finds or determines that it's adequate, then you kind of move that mushiness out of it. The president will often make a finding or a determination on a particular issue. And that's it. I mean, that's
Yeah.
So,
Oh, it may have been entirely inappropriate.
Maybe so, but the legal entity, in this case, the
No,
planning
I
board.
understand what you're saying,
Yes.
and I'm in agreement. I just feel that if you just put in a number, there are so many things that people could come in with and say, well, okay, for this, I need this height, because that's the height that this piece of equipment requires, or, you know. So when you put in an arbitrary number,
okay, these frontages,
Okay.
okay. Now we're up to tier 3. In 3 different GMAs. Now these are bigger businesses now. These are,
right, but you've got the same problem on your minimum front setback as far as, I think we should be looking at, as you were talking about, structures or something. Not that much green area.
right.
Because I wouldn't be surprised if you actually did an analysis of the store down here based on our impact statement, if they had at least a tier 3 low because of the traffic.
Would a gas pump with the canopy, would that be considered an unoccupied structure for the purposes of?
I would, yeah, structure as defined as
Right.
anything. Anything fixed, with either a foundation or
Not intended to be moved.
not intended to be moved. In some ordinances that I was looking at, if you have something that's intended to be moved or can be moved and it's there for over a certain period, it's now regulated as if it was permanent.
So, fix the finding language again. Okay. I'll fix that too. What about these widths? These are again, big businesses.
So looking up rather.
300 feet, this is for the lowest end. It's 300 feet and it goes all the way up to 500 feet for a high impact. That's a really big business.
Whoa, which one are you on now?
I'm just saying, it's,
Oh, yes, you were going down, yeah. For something really, really big, yeah, that road frontage isn't too bad. I still think the side and rear setbacks are too high. And when you get to moderate, you're talking 100 feet on the side.
Yeah, look at, I know because I drive, I deliver there a lot, in Brewer, the backside of Walmart that fronts up against the medical center. There's a paved road, a delivery road, and then literally the property line's right up, it can't be any more than 20 feet before you're on the property of the health center.
what about back? A lot of development. What about development that does not require road frontage?
See, that's another problem. You really haven't made any provision for somebody to get back into. My thing with some of these side and rear setbacks, especially if you look at the one on Tier 3 high, you got 200 feet side and rear. So if you used 4 acres of that land, not even considering the front, you had a 4-acre square that you built your business on. That would be roughly 400 by 400 feet. It's actually a little over, you know, I think it's actually an acre is like 208 feet by 208 feet.
44,000 square feet.
Yeah, I think it actually comes out to like 208 by 208, but for round figures, make it simple, 200. So you had a 4-acre plot, 400 by 400. With those setbacks, you would have to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, not even counting the front. You'd have to have 8 more acres that you didn't build anything on.
You got 10 acres. Either 10, 15, 15, 10's the minimum in a high, tier high.
Yeah, but 8 of those acres
No.
just on the sides and back.
One of the things that Paul had pointed out was like out west. Well, I just came back from out west, and this was like goods and bads. Like the first thing, every time I go out to that part of the country and come back, the first thing I noticed, like when I was driving home today, was the trees, because they have no trees out there. Out in Denver, out in Aurora, there are no frickin' trees. And the only trees they planted, only trees are there are ones that they actually plant, because it's prairie, okay, and it's wide open. So,
Been there.
right, but it jumps off the table at you, and they have like a spread out development. I mean, to me, they do have, in some cases, you know, for some of their commercial sites, it's excessive. You know, it creates a very sprawly look and feel. You know, by having some of these wider distances, and maybe we should look at some of that stuff. But you know, you talk about, you know, the something that tall, like if you're talking like radio towers or wind turbines and oil derricks and this sort of thing. You know, even though oil derricks aren't even really that tall, you can see oil derricks, you know, 4 or 5 miles away. Okay, you would never, if we had oil up here in Maine, you know, if we had oil in Clifton and people had oil derricks, you would never even know that they were there, because you would never see them, because they would go clear, you know, 100 by 100 foot area, 150 by 150 foot area, and go put the oil derricks in, and the trees would be there, and you would never see. You have oil derricks all over the place in this town.
Sort of temporary structure anyway.
Well, right, but I'm just saying, from the perspective of the look,
Yeah.
I mean, just looking at the aesthetic aspect of it, so it's very difficult to try to discern all that. You know, you could see, you know, there weren't any wind turbines where I was, but I know there are some in other parts of Colorado, but there are not any around Aurora. They've got all kinds of other stuff instead. You know, you know, this is what you can see in Aurora at Buckley. They've got about 6 or 8 huge white domes, because that's where the Space Data Center is, okay? And they're huge. I mean, and you can landmark yourself. When you're like at the restaurant in the daytime and you can't remember like what road you took, you just look at those white domes, okay? And you start heading that direction and you get there. I mean, well, let's look up at Cutler, except for that you can see them, because in Cutler, that's actually kind of a good point. Because in Cutler, they have those things up there too, but you can't see them because of the hill country and the trees, really. You have to kind of there's places where you can see them, but you just can't see them from just anywhere. Okay, if you're in Aurora, Colorado, you can see those freaking domes from everywhere. So I don't know what to do about some of that stuff. To rent a 2-bedroom apartment just off Buckley Air Force Base, what do you think it might cost
Oh, $1,200 a month?
a month? Including water and sewer, heat and power is extra. 2-bedroom apartment,
I guess 1,200.
more.
Oh, well, in that case, I'll go for $2,000.
Like between 1,500 and 1,700. You go over to Colorado Springs by Peterson Air Force Base, it goes down to around 1,100. That's still pretty pricey.
Well, you don't want to live in New York City then, where you can get an efficiency 1 room for $2,000 a month. Walk up 5 flights too.
I know, but I'm just pointing out, young families, it's very difficult for young families.
Yeah.
Okay, I saved it, and then we'll go over to Article 13.
13.
Okay,
Just
so
as a
doesn't look
minute,
at
Justice,
those setbacks.
I get this whole page all marked up, the very first page.
Of page of
First page is Article 13.
13.
Wait 1 second, I think I did make changes to this, but I didn't read on it. So, hold on a second here, so. Oh yeah, this is the one where we reformatted those tables, right? No, yes, no. So the categories are,
I think we made a lot of changes on what was and was not permitted when we started thinking about it.
It was really confusing the way it was read.
try to find. What do you have, Bill?
Well, we had problems with the definitions of running right down the page, commercial uses, then general institution, general industrial, transportation, utilities, resource space, and I'm trying to figure out what we did here. I know we took commercial. Oh, okay, I can figure out one of them already. We scratched category 7, outdoor recreational and entertainment facilities.
Right.
New commercial, we scratched that and we dropped it down to resource-based uses down at the bottom. We created a category 5.
Yeah, I do remember that. You know what? I swear to God, I'm gonna go home and look for it. I swear to God, I remember typing that, now that you're bringing that up, I remember retyping that whole thing.
Right, right, well, I didn't make any notes, I remember we went through it. She must have a whole bunch of stuff somewhere.
I was watching somebody else make notes, usually Bill makes some on this, so I know I didn't make notes, but
It's like my new phone, every day there's eight updates for different apps, and I just close it out and it gets more and more. We didn't do anything with the charts.
No, but we did something with that, and it was,
Page one,
because now we have categories and categories, and, you know, so categories and categories equals this categories, but, I don't know, so this was moved,
We moved that down to the bottom page. We created a category 5 under resource-based uses.
we did do that. I can't remember now, it was a long time ago when we discussed this.
But for some reason, I circled each of these topics: general institution, general industrial, transportation, utility. We said it was confusing.
I got a sticker in there that said agreed. Page 17 too. I guess I never did read it.
well, now it says entertainment facilities, so, okay, no, they are outdoor. So if someone wanted to come in and put in, you know, Six Flags over Clifton, it would fit there, right?
Yeah.
Is that gonna be a resource-based use? I'm asking that question.
No.
Well, we just did it.
I still think it fits under commercial use, recreational entertainment.
Well,
So
maybe in hindsight it does now, but at the time we said we couldn't move it anymore.
well, that's where we debated.
I just undid it all, see how it was.
Let's read it though, because, not that, but for some reason, category 1, 2, general commercial uses.